65 years ago, a teenage girl in small-town Oklahoma gave birth to a baby boy, and within days, she gave that baby boy up for adoption.
In 2010, 1,500 miles away in Colfax, Washington, that mother and that child reunited. KXLY4's McKay Allen was at that family reunion and joins us tonight with this story.
And those facts alone, a reunion after 65 years and an emotional reunion at that, make for a compelling enough story. But there is much more to it. Two secrets, two shocking revelations that ended up bringing a family together.
This is the guy.
There are moments in life that define a life. This is one of those moments. An impossible reunion, a mother and her son, born of tragedy, culminating in joy. The story begins in Muskogee, Oklahoma in 1944 when something happened, something you just didn't talk about.
It was just taboo. It was, no, absolutely not.
January 1st, 1945, a teenage girl gave birth to a baby boy and promptly gave that baby boy up for adoption.
I couldn't falter for it. I knew the times that this was happening, and it was like taboo, you know, you didn't speak about it and all like this.
Within weeks, the teenage girl's family moved far away from Muskogee to California. In 1946, that teenage girl got married, eventually had 2 children, and never spoke about her baby boy to anyone.
It was a secret. No one in the family knew.
Fast forward to 2010. That teenage girl, her name is Tawana Jo Yaden. She's now 83 years old. She lives in a retirement home in Colfax, Washington, suffering from Alzheimer's, memories slowly slipping away, still carrying this secret that no one knew anything about.
I called every aunt and uncle. They didn't have a clue. Not a one of them.
This is Carolyn, Tawana Jo Yaden's daughter. Around 6 weeks ago, Carolyn's grandson was online. Interested in family history, he was perusing different websites when he stumbled quite by accident upon this. A posting on an adoption website by a man named Fred Kaiser, a man trying desperately to find his birth mother. The post said Fred was born in 1945 in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and the birth mother he was seeking, a woman named Tawana Jo Yaden.
It listed her name and how old she was at his birth and where she lived.
And when you saw the name, what did you think?
It had to be my mother. I mean, I cannot imagine 2 Tawana Jo Yadens on this planet.
Carolyn stared at the page dumbfounded. What did this mean? Is it possible? Did her mother have another child she had never spoken about? Carolyn realized she needed to contact Fred Kaiser.
I fretted for a couple of days, and then I tried the phone number and it had been disconnected. So that's when I thought, Facebook.
After a quick Facebook search, Carolyn located a Fred Kaiser in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and sent him a message.
I said, my name's Carolyn Hayner, and I'm trying to find a Fred E. Kaiser, and this is concerning a Tawana Jo Yaden.
And 1,500 miles away in Muskogee, it was Fred Kaiser's turn to be dumbfounded.
Man, my heart stopped. Oh, God, how many people in the world has that name, you know? And just one person, it had to be. I said, son, that's got to be my mother. All these years I looked for it, I said, this is my mother.
After phone calls and emails, Carolyn became convinced. Fred Kaiser was her brother, a brother she never knew existed. And Carolyn decided it was time to ask her mother an almost unbelievable question. Did you give birth to a baby boy in 1945?
She said no, and she started making excuses about family. And finally I said, no, Mom, isn't that the name you gave the little boy you had to give up for adoption? And she said, Mama wouldn't let me keep him. I cried and cried and cried.
A 65-year secret revealed, a burden lifted. But there was another secret, a secret more tragic that Carolyn's mother had buried even deeper. That child, the baby she carried, the baby born on New Year's Day in 1945, was the result of something awful, a rape.
My grandmother was very staunch Baptist and very, very proud. And I simply don't think she could have handled it.
My heart just broke because I knew that then, after I really heard whole story that all these years, how strong she must have been.
With emotions near the surface, 65 years old, Fred Kaiser called the retirement home in Colfax and heard his mother's voice for the first time.
Right off the bat, I introduced myself, and then she said, "Oh, honey," said, "I've wondered what's happened to you all these years, and thought about you a lot of times."
And Fred had thought about her lots of times too. Just days old, he was adopted by a wonderful couple in Oklahoma, raised in a good home. He eventually married, settled in Muskogee, and had children of his own. Fred always knew he was adopted and began actively looking for his mother in 1971.
I kept hitting, just run to brick wall.
After 40 years of searching, after an improbable chain of events, after phone calls and emails and planning, the day finally arrived. The reunion. Fred and his family, all the way from Oklahoma, arrived at Tawana Joe Yaden's retirement home in Colfax, Washington, preparing to meet a woman he'd thought about every day of his life, but never thought he'd meet.
This is the guy. They didn't let me see you. They probably told you that. I don't know.
Things worked out just fine.
Yeah.
I was taking well care of it.
I knew that she loved me. That was never, that was never a question. It was just being able to meet her again and just tell her myself one time how much I loved her. And I got to do that. I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
After 65 years, a mother and her secret son, bound by an unbreakable love, together again. A reunion born of tragedy, culminating in pure joy.
My life has made a full circle that it has. I could die right now and be a happy man.
And it was touching just being there, seeing this reunion. The thing Carolyn kept saying over and over again is she didn't even realize she had this brother. And the thing Fred kept saying again and again was there was just this sense of relief, this overwhelming relief. He never thought he'd have this chance. He was so happy that day that he actually gave me a big hug after we did it. He was just hugging anybody in sight. It was pretty amazing just being there.
So what happens next? Where do they go from here?
Well, we asked that. We said, okay, now you have this essentially this brand new family. What do you do now? And they both joked, that their Christmas budgets will have to increase a little bit. They also said, at each other's family reunions, they'll of course invite each other now. And Carolyn plans to take a trip to Oklahoma sometime in the near future.
By the way, it is National Adoption Month. What a
There you
great
go.
thing to do and a
you
great
go.
story. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, guys.